The ship floated in the darkness of space, silent and forgotten. No lights, no signals. Just a shadow among the stars that had been there for so long that even the patrols of nearby colonies ignored it, a relic from a war no one remembered, a ghost. The name on its hull could barely be read through the dust and ice. UES Nightborne, once the pride of Earth's fleet, now only a story told by old veterans who swore they had seen it vanish into deep space. Sighed the cold air, never moved, frost-coated. Every surface cryopods lined the main crew bay, each one containing a human locked in frozen sleep. They had been sleeping for almost a century, unaware of the years that passed outside their bodies, perfectly preserved their hearts. Beating only. Once every few minutes, the only sound was the low hum of the ship's core, like a heartbeat too. Faint to notice, then the hum changed. It became stronger, a deeper vibration through the metal walls. Lights flickered in the corridors. One by one, systems came alive. Screens lit up with streams of data. The ship's AI woke without ceremony, without orders. Its name was Just, and it had been waiting for a signal that never came until now. A burst of strange energy washed over the hull, not from any human source. Deep in the crew bay, the first cryopod hissed. A thin stream of vapor escaped into the freezing air. The woman inside stirred, eyes flickering under her lids. Captain Mara Keen, veteran of the last border wars, the one who had taken Nightborne into its final mission and never returned. Her eyes snapped open, fogging the inside of the glass. She gasped as the pod lid lifted. Her first breath in decades felt like knives in her chest. She stumbled forward, knees buckling. The floor was cold against her. Hansmara's vision blurred, but her instincts were already awake. Something had forced the ship online. Something had forced her out of the dark. She looked around at the rows of other pods, still sealed, still glowing blue. Then she heard it, a voice not human, cold and sharp like metal cutting through the air. The signal was in an alien tongue, but it just translated instantly and projected it into the bay. Surrender. Your worlds burn, your skies no survivors. The voice was calm, almost bored. In the background, Mara could hear faint screams, static, and the sound of weapons far away. Her mind snapped into focus. She staggered to the nearest terminal, forcing her stiff fingers to move. What happened? She, Raspegis, responded in its steady, emotionless tone. Earth is under attack. Multiple human colonies destroyed. First wave estimated to reach Sol in 3 weeks. The alien fleet has not yet detected Nightborne. Mara swallowed hard. More crew. We need more crew. Wake them all, she ordered. Acknowledged. Pods cycling now, the AI replied. One by one, the hisses began. The frozen soldiers waking from their long sleep, confusion and coughing filling the bay. Lieutenant Brooks, the ship's tactical officer, was the first to stand. He looked at Mara, eyes wide. Last I remember we were. He stopped. The voice of the alien broadcast filled the bay again, this time louder, repeating its threat. The crew exchanged looks. The words were clear even without translation. Surrender or be erased. It was not a demand. It was a promise. Mara's mind worked quickly. She knew Nightborne was not a normal ship. It carried weapons long banned by Earth's governments, relics of a darker age when survival meant using anything that worked. Most believed those weapons had been dismantled before the ship disappeared. She knew they had not, and she knew why they had been hidden, because one day humanity might need them again. The bridge, the crew moved into their stations as if they had never left. The chairs creaked. The consoles glowed soft blue. Shadows danced across the metal walls. The starfield outside shifted as the engines rumbled, awake for the first time in a century. Power at 60%. Aegis reported stealth systems operational, weapons offline until further command. Brooks leaned forward, tapping the screen. That's an alien. Battle group 40 light minutes away. Mara, if they detect us. They won't, Mara said, cutting him off, her voice steady but low. We move silent. Keep our profile cold. No transmissions. No lights. No mistakes. The AI's voice returned. Captain, enemy fleet trajectory indicates planned approach to human colony. Scanera estimated destruction within to our Scanera. Mara whispered to herself. She remembered that colony. It was young, full of families fresh from Earth farms and fields, now about to be nothing but ash. She clenched her jaw. Aegis set course. Shadow space route. Shadow space was dangerous. A hyperspace corridor barely stable enough for a small ship, but Nightborne had been designed for it. It was faster than any known alien drive, but if a calculation was wrong by even a fraction, the ship could be torn apart. Mara knew the risk. She also knew it was the only way to intercept before Ganira Felingins, charging Brooks. Warned. Mara glanced at the navigation officer. Her name was Rin, youngest on the crew, even a century ago. Technically over 100 years old, but still with the same sharp focus. She plotted the course, her fingers moving without hesitation. Despite the stakes, the hum of the engines deepened. The ship shuddered. Slightly lights flickered, then the stars outside stretched into lines and vanished, replaced by the shimmering, twisting tunnel of shadow space. The crew felt the pressure in their chests, the disorientation of a place that wasn't really space at all. Mara stood gripping the arm of her chair, eyes fixed on the forward screen. No one spoke. Even Aegis seemed quieter than usual. Minutes passed before the tunnel split open and the stars returned, but they were not alone. Ahead, like black knives cutting through the void, the alien fleet hung in formation, massive and silent. Mara could see the glow of their weapon systems charging. Their hulls were jagged like the shells of deep sea creatures, covered in symbols that pulsed. Faint red target lock possible, Aegis informed. But Mara raised her hand. Not yet. We don't strike unless we have to keep us invisible. Crew stared at the sight before them, a fleet unlike anything humanity had built or faced. There were no obvious engines, no heat signatures. The ships seemed to move by bending space itself, and in the center, it's a massive vessel, darker than the void, with a single red eye glowing on its prow. It was the flagship. Brooks leaned closer to his console. Captain, that's No, she interrupted. That's the Wraitha. The name carried weight even among humans who had never fought. The Wraith was more than a commander. He was a ghost story told to cadets, the one who left no survivors, the one who burned colonies without even landing. The alien broadcast returned this time: clearer, surrender or be erased. And as Mara listened, she realized it was not aimed at Earth alone. It was aimed at the galaxy, every species, every world. The Wraith was not waging war for territory. He was waging it for extinction. Mara turned to her crew, her voice calm but sharp like steel. Stay quiet. We watch, we learn. When we strike, it will be on our terms. Until then, not a single spark to give us away. Understood? Chorus of yes, Captain filled the bridge. Then, without warning, the screen flared. An alert sounded. Enemy scan inbound. Aegis reported power signatures rising. Their searching shut down everything non-essential. Mara ordered cut heat, cut lights, run on emergency only. The bridge fell into darkness. Only the faint glow of the main screen remained. The crew held their breath as the scan wave passed over them, a ripple of blue light across the hull. For a moment it seemed to slow, as if sensing something. Then it moved on, vanishing into the void. Brooks exhaled too loudly. Mara shot him a look. His voice was barely a whisper. They didn't see a snot. Yet she said quietly, not yet. The crew turned back to their stations, but the tension was a live wire. In the air, every eye on the enemy formation, every second stretching like an hour. Then the AI's voice came again, cold and certain. Captain, multiple hyperspace distortions detected directly ahead. New fleet signatures inbound. And Mara felt the weight in her chest as the screen updated, icons appearing one after another. The aliens weren't waiting. They were calling reinforcements, and Nightborne was now sitting in the middle of the kill zone. The alien reinforcements appeared like jagged shadows, tearing through space one by one. They dropped out of hyperspace, forming a wide net around the main fleet. Their hulls gleamed faintly, as if reflecting light that wasn't there. The red symbols along their sides pulsed faster, almost like a heartbeat. Mara knew what that meant. The aliens were readying for war. The bridge felt smaller, tighter as the crew took in the tactical display. There were too many ships. Even if Nightborne had full power and every weapon online, it would be suicide to attack head-on. Brooks was already shaking his head, muttering numbers under his breath that didn't add up to survival. Mara's voice cut through the tension. Aegis status on shadow space re-entry not possible. The AI replied. Enemy distortion fields are disrupting the corridor calculations. Re-entry attempt will result in catastrophic hull failure. In simple terms, Brooks said grimly, "We're stuckrin." The navigation officer kept her eyes on the screens. "They're not firing yet." "Captain, they're pushing us inward, toward the center formation hurting us," Mara said. Softly, exactly. Brooks nodded like, "They're playing with their food," and there comes a sudden static burst made. Everyone flinched. The alien broadcast returned, but this time it was no generic threat. The voice spoke directly to them. "UES Nightborne, your presence is known. Surrender. Vessel, and you may be granted a swift death. Resist, and you will see your crew consumed one by one." Mara's jaw tightened. "Mute it," she said calmly, her eyes never leaving the forward display. "If they want us in the middle, they'll find we don't. Stay where we're told. Just bring up the asteroid belt to port side." Mara ordered. The screen shifted, showing a dense cluster of rocks. Drifting slowly in the void, fragments of a long-dead moon, irregular shapes spinning in lazy arcs. "You're thinking." "Cover Brooks' guests more than that," Mara replied. "If they want to hurt us, let them think it's working. We'll use the belt to break their formation and slip out before they close the net completely." Rin began plotting the route, but her brow furrowed. "They're going to see us turn." "That's fine," Mara said. "Let them watch. If they think we're running into a trap, they won't suspect we're building one of our own, engines to minimal thrust Aegis. Keep our thermal signature buried below the belts." Natural debris field acknowledged. The ship shifted, gently turning toward the belt. The alien formation adjusted, as if nudging them along, keeping the perimeter tight. Mara could almost feel the unseen eyes watching her every move. The asteroid field loomed ahead, dark and jagged shadows drifting like ancient beasts in slow motion. Some were the size of small moons, others no bigger than escape pods, but all of them could tear the Nightborne apart if they struck at full speed. Brooks glanced back at Mara. "Captain, this belt's unstable. Half those rocks are colliding in real-time. Navigational hazards off the charts then." "Keep your charts steady," she said. "If we thread the path right, they'll lose line of sight for just long enough." As they entered the field, the first impacts echoed through the hull, tiny fragments pinging off the shields. Aegis whispered in the coms, adjusting trajectory. Collision in 5 seconds, adjusting again. Behind them, alien ships closed in, cautiously unwilling to risk their own hulls in the dense debris. Mara knew they'd send smaller craft into the field soon, scouts to keep the pressure on. She was counting on it. Sure enough, the sensors picked up fast-moving contacts weaving between the asteroid's 6 alien interceptors, their sleek black forms slipping through the gaps like predators in the dark. Brooks muttered, "Here we go. Weapons are still offline." "Captain, not for long," Mara replied. "Charge rail batteries. Low yield. We don't want to light up the whole sector, just knock a few teeth out." First alien craft darted into range, weaving to avoid the floating rocks. The Nightborne's forward guns spat brief flashes of light. The first target exploded into shards, spinning away into the void. Another was crippled, spinning out of control before slamming into a drifting boulder, though. Others scattered but stayed close, trying to flank them from different angles. One got a lock and fired. The blast rocked the Nightborne. Hard alarms blared. Damage reports scrolling across the console's minor hull. Breach deck 6 Aegis reported, sealed by internal bulkheads, no loss of atmosphere. Belt thickened around them, the asteroids moving unpredictably, some scraping dangerously close to the hull. The enemy scouts struggled to match their pace. One slammed into a spinning rock and vanished in a flash of fire. Mara kept her eyes on the forward path, her hands gripping the armrests. Every second they stayed inside the belt was a second the main fleet couldn't see their exact position. She needed one more minute, maybe 2 before. New alarm blared loud and sharp. Multiple hyperspace flares ahead. Brooks shouted on the screen. Mara saw them emerging from the far side of the belt. Alien hunter-killer ships. Smaller than the main cruisers, but faster and designed for close pursuit. The trap had snapped shut on both sides. Mara's voice was cold, steady. All hands brace for combat. "We're not the prey in this hunt, not today." And, as the hunters closed in, the Nightborne's core began to hum deeper, the kind of sound no alien ship had heard in over 100 years. From the Nightborne's core grew into a low vibration that trembled through every bulkhead. The crew could feel it in their bones. The deep, dangerous rhythm of a weapon that was never supposed to exist. Brooks froze at his console, eyes flicking to the captain. Captain, you can't mean I do, Mara said. Her gaze locked on the tactical display, the hunter-killers ahead the scouts. Behind the net was closing tighter by the second, and if they didn't tear a hole in it now, they'd never get outages. Her voice was flat. Bring Starbreaker online there. Was a pause. The AI's tone remained calm, but something about it felt heavier. Starbreaker activation will violate Earth Fleet Directive 01. Deployment without council approval is a court-martial offense. Do you confirmed? Mara replied without hesitation. The crew shifted in their seats, some exchanging quick uneasy. Glance's Starbreaker was not just a weapon. It was a relic from the worst years of humanity's early expansion ban, because it didn't just destroy ships, it erased them completely. Nothing left but drifting radiation and twisted space, the kind. A thing that left scars in the void for centuries. Power, Rooting Brooks reported, voice tight, we're pulling every spare watt from the secondary systems. Life support's going to run. Lynn, do it, Mara ordered. Her eyes didn't move from the forward view. The hunter-killers were spreading out ahead, trying to box them in from multiple vectors. Behind, the scouts darted through the belt like shadows. Closing the distance, energy spike detected. One of the tactical crew called out, they're scanning. Us again, Captain. They'll see the charge build up. Then Mara's voice was a blade. The first hunter-killer opened fire. Green plasma lances slicing through the belt, vaporizing smaller rocks. The Nightborne swerved between two massive boulders, sparks showering the bridge as another blast skimmed their shields. Aegis kept the targeting reticles steady, lining up the shot. Starbreaker at 70%, Brooks called out. 60 seconds to full charge. The enemy formation tightened like jaws, closing the hunter-killers ahead, accelerating for the kill. The scouts behind, firing bursts to drive them forward into the trap. The crew could see the red glow of alien targeting locks crawling over their consoles. Then Mara spoke quietly, but every soul on the bridge heard her. Hold steady, keep them close. The hunter-killers were now so near the forward screens could make out the details of their hulls, sharp edges, black armor rippling like liquid under starlight, their weapons cycling up for the final volley. Starbreaker full charge, Aegis announced. Mara didn't hesitate. Fire. The Nightborne's forward section lit in a blinding flash. The beam that erupted was not like any normal weapon. It was silent, but the light cut through the void. Like the edge of a god's blade, everything it touched simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just absence. 3 hunter-killers vanished instantly as the beams swept across them, leaving empty darkness where they had been. The shockwave in space wasn't visible, but the instruments screamed readings. Spiking across every scale, the alien scouts broke formation. Some scattering, others halting completely as if stunned. Radiation spike from target zone, Brooks reported, shields holding, but they won't like what they just saw. No, they won't, Mara said quietly, her voice unreadable. Aegis, find me the fastest route out of this belt before they regroup. The AI's tone shifted, recalculating. Warning. Enemy flagship is accelerating toward our position on the tactical display, the largest contact in the alien fleet. Moved like a predator, scenting blood, its vector straight through the asteroid belt. The Wraith was coming himself. Friend's fingers flew across the navigation console, plotting evasive jumps, but her voice betrayed the tension. Captain, every safe corridor is collapsing under distortion fields. They're locking the exits down one by one. So we make our own, Mara replied, eyes narrowing. Bring us starboard 20 degrees line. Us up with that debris corridor between sectors 17 and 19. Brooks, check the screen. That's not a corridor, Captain, that's a kill box. Mara finished for him. Yeah, I see it. We're going through. The Nightborne surged forward, weaving through tumbling rocks, the burn marks on the hull glowing faintly in the dark behind them. The alien fleet shifted to intercept. More hunter-killers spilling into the belt, their engines glowing with unnatural light, the red eye of the flagship growing larger on the screen. Mara gripped the armrest and spoke to the crew. Steady. We've already woken the galaxy's nightmare. Let's see if they can survive it twice. The alien hunter fleet moved like a living net, closing in on the Nightborne, each ship sliding into position with precise, cold intent. The asteroid belt was no longer their shield, it had become their cage. Chunks of rock tumbled and shattered as alien weapons fired in short bursts, forcing the Nightborne into tighter and tighter paths. Mara sat unmoving, her eyes locked forward, but her mind was already 5 steps ahead. You're not rushing the kill. Brooks murmured, his gaze locked on the Tactical display, they're watching us, measuring us, studying us. Mara corrected, her tone low, but sharp. Aegis confirmed. The AI replied, alien fleet is testing shield resilience, weapon cooldown intervals, and maneuvering thresholds. Conclusion. They intend to adapt tactics to ship's capabilities for prolonged engagement. Probability of survival without strategic disruption, 8%. 8%, Rin whispered, just loud enough for Brooks to hear. That's basically none. Mara leaned forward in her chair. Then, we give them something they can't adapt to, she said, but her eyes stayed fixed on the debris fields around them. Alien fire slackened slightly, not to spare them, but to push them exactly where the enemy wanted them. Mara, let them do it, at least for the moment. She saw the pattern now. 3 hunter-killers driving them from the front to heavy cruisers blocking the flanks. A massive gap at their rear, but that opening wasn't a mercy. It was bait. Captain Brooks said they're leaving us a way out. That's not a way out, Mara replied. That's a leash. They'll let us run just far enough to think we're free, then they'll pull us back in and close the trap. Harder next time. The ship jolted as a mine exploded, nearby hurling fragments against the shields. Aegis adjusted course instantly, but Mara caught sight of the detonation's placement. It wasn't random. It was a guide marker. They're mapping us through the belt, she realized. Marking every move we... Mac, then, one of the crew on sensors, spoke up, voice tight. Captain, anomaly starboard 31 degrees, metallic signature, irregular movement. The screen, the image magnified, a jagged asteroid tumbling end over end. At first glance, it was just another rock, but the longer they watched, the clearer it became. Something metallic was embedded deep inside it. That's not an asteroid, Brooks said slowly. That's a wreck. Rin, check the readings. No, it's not just a wreck. That's human. Every head on the bridge turned toward her. Scan confirms. Aegis. Added registry fragments indicate UN's retribution lost in action 86 years ago. Cause of loss unknown. Brooks swore under his breath that ship was one of ours, and if it's here, Mara said quietly, then it died in the same trap we're in. Now the crew went silent as the reality sank in, but then Mara's eyes sharpened. Aegis, any chance that wreck still has operational components? Partial systems possible, AI replied. Large energy spike detected. An aft section could be unstable reactor core. Mara's lips curved in the faintest trace of a plan. Brooks, I want firing solutions on that reactor. If we trigger it, we might give ourselves enough chaos to break free. Thought blow half this belt apart. Brooks said, you realize that's a coin toss between us getting out or being shredded with them. Then let's make sure it lands on the right side. Mara answered calmly before Brooks could reply. Aegis interrupted. Captain, alien flagship entering belt perimeter, estimated interception in 94 seconds. On the forward screen, the Wraith's vessel loomed larger than any other ship, its single red eye glowing like a predator's glare. Every smaller alien craft shifted to open a path for it, the fleet's entire movement changing to match the flagship's approach. Mara spoke without hesitation. Plot the shot on that wreck, time it. For when the flagship's dead center in the blast radius, we're going to make the Wraith regret coming. In here himself, the bridge was silent for a beat. Then Brooks began to work, fingers flying over his console, his voice tight but certain. Captain, the Wraith was coming, and Mara intended to greet him with a welcome no alien would forget. The Wraith's flagship slid into the asteroid belt with the slow confidence of a predator that had never failed. The massive vessel didn't dodge the tumbling rocks. It shattered them with controlled bursts of energy, each fragment burning to dust before touching its armor. The single crimson eye on its prow burned brighter with every passing second. The bridge of the Nightborne. The crew could feel the change in the air. It was heavier, tighter. Every console display was a wall of red warning marks, yet Mara sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the tactical overlay, showing the flagship's path directly toward the drifting wreck of the UN's retribution. Distance to target. Brooks called out. 90 seconds. Alien formation shifted to protect their leader. Heavy cruisers flanked the flagship. Hunter-killers scouted the edges. Even the smaller escorts moved with a kind of discipline that said they knew this was the decisive moment. Mara didn't flinch if they were right. She intended to make it decisive in a way none of them expected. Daegis, Mara said, voice calm and steady. When the flagship hits that vector, detonate the reactor on the map. Retribution's wreck. Use precision. Targeting no early flash, no warning acknowledged, the AI replied. Calculating yield probability. Successful disruption of enemy formation. 72%, that's good enough, Mara said. Asteroid belt seemed to tighten around them as alien ships pushed deeper. The noise of distant weapons fire echoed faintly through the hole as fragments of destroyed asteroids slammed into larger ones, lighting the belt in momentary flashes of gold and silver. The Nightborne stayed low behind a cluster of jagged boulders, watching 70 seconds. Brooks reported there. Accelerating, Captain Rin glanced up from her console, her voice almost a whisper. You fought the Wraith before, haven't you? Mara's eyes never left the screen once. A long time. Go on a border skirmish. He destroyed 3 ships before we even realized he was there. No signals, no hesitation, just precision death. And you survived, Brooks said. Not quite a question, barely. Mara replied, and not because he failed, because he let me live. I think he wanted someone to remember. 50 seconds, Brooks said. The flagship was almost majestic in its approach. Its black armor seemed to drink in the faint starlight, its edges sharp enough to look dangerous even at a distance. The smaller escort ships moved in perfect synchronization, every turn, every thrust aligned as if one mind commanded them all. 30 seconds, Brooks said, voice tightening. The Rex reactor is unstable, reading spikes. We've got one shot at this. Captain Mara's gaze hardened. Then let's make it count. The flagship closed the last stretch, the Retribution's broken hull tumbling slowly ahead of it.
Oh.
From here, the scorch marks and torn metal looked almost fresh. The ghosts of a battle long gone, hiding the deadliest weapon the humans could still offer. 15 seconds. Brooks said, weapons armed, reactor lock. Confirmed. Rin's hands clenched at her sides. 10 seconds. Brooks' voice was low, tight. Every breath on the bridge seemed held. 5 seconds. Aegis began final countdown. Ready on your mark. Captain, the Wraiths flagship glided into the kill zone, perfectly centered. Mara didn't speak a single word. She simply dropped her hand like a blade. The belt lit up in an instant. The reactor went critical with a light too bright for eyes to bear. A silent sphere of destruction ripped outward through the debris field, tearing rock and metal into dust. The blast wave slammed into alien escorts, flipping them end over end. Shields collapsing under the radiation wash, the flagship took the full force on its forward hull, its shields flaring violently before failing. Entire sections of armor buckled and split, molten fragments spinning into the void. Yet somehow the massive vessel kept moving, slower now, but still alive. We heard it, Brooks said, disbelief and relief tangled in his voice. We actually heard it. Not enough, Mara replied, eyes narrowing as the red eye of the flagship flickered, then flared brighter than before. Then comms crackled alive with a voice that froze the air around them, deep, resonant, and impossibly calm. Nightborne, you have my attention. Nomura leaned forward, her voice low and certain. Good, because I wasn't finished. The Wraith's voice lingered in the air like a shadow. You could hear but never see, cold and unshaken despite the damage his flagship had just taken. The alien fleet's formation was ragged from the blast, but already it was tightening again, regrouping. With unnerving precision, the smaller escorts moved back into their defensive pattern, shielding the wounded flagship as if nothing had happened. On the Nightborne's bridge, the crew worked fast, weapons cycling, navigation recalculating, but the weight of that single sentence still pressed on them. The Wraith wasn't just angry, he was interested, and that was far more dangerous. Brooks checked the tactical feed. Captain, he's closing again. Shields partially restored, weapons still offline for the flagship, but his escorts are arming full spread. Mara's eyes stayed on the crimson eye glaring through the debris field. He's not retreating, Captain Brooks said. If I didn't know better, I'd say he's coming straight for us personally. Rin's voice was tight. What does he want? Mara answered, without hesitation. To learn how we bleed the first wave of hunter-killers. Broke formation, charging toward the Nightborne like shards of black glass, their weapons flaring in the dark plasma bursts and kinetic slugs ripped through the space between them and the ship. The Nightborne dove between 2 tumbling asteroids, the hull groaning under the strain of sudden maneuvering. Return fire, Mara ordered. Rail batteries, only short bursts keep us moving. The forward gun spoke in hard, quick pulses. One alien craft shattered in a flash of burning fragments. Another spun wildly out of control before vanishing into the rocks. But more were coming, weaving through the debris faster than the crew. Could track impact portside middeck, Brooks called out. Hull breach sealed by emergency bulkheads we're holding for now. The belt was no longer a shield, it was a knife fight in the dark, hunter-killers looping in and out of the drifting rocks firing. From angles the Nightborne's turrets couldn't always cover them. The warning came through sensors borders incoming. Mara's head snapped toward the feed escape pods. Negative Aegis, replied. Teleport insertion detected. Alien strike teams breaching. Decks 3 and 5. Mara stood from her chair. Voice sharp. Security teams to decks 3 and 5 repel borders. The internal comes crackled as the sound of gunfire and shouting erupted in the background. Alien weapons hissed through the corridors. The clang of metal boots echoed against the hull. Mara turned back to Brooks. Keep us moving, don't let those hunters box us in. Another blast rattled the hull. This time forward shields dropped to 60%, and still the red eye of the flagship loomed larger behind the Kyosire. Hurting us again, Rin said, voice strained. And this time they're coming inside to finish the Jabages, Mara said. Cut environmental controls on the breach decks. Pump nitrogen. Flood their suits with co-confirmed. The AI replied through the ship's internal cameras. Mara saw the alien boarders stagger their movements, slowing before collapsing one by one. Security teams sweeping in to secure the halls. It bought them breathing room, but not enough. The hunters outside were still pressing. Captain Brooks shouted. We've got a clean hyperspace corridor for maybe 40 seconds. If we burn hot right now, we can break out. Mara's gaze shifted to the flagship, the crimson eye fixed on them. Every instinct told her the Wraith wanted her to run, wanted to follow her out into the open where the full fleet could finish them. She exhaled, slow and cold. No, we're not leaving, not yet. Rin looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Then what's the plan, Mara's? The voice was steady. We go through. The bridge went so still that even the low hum of the Nightborne systems felt loud. Brooks turned to her like he hadn't heard her. Right, Captain. You just said go through him, right, as in through the Wraiths. Flagship, that's exactly what I said, Mara, replied her voice calm, but carrying the weight of finality. You've all seen it. He's the mind-holding. His fleet together. Take him out, and the rest will break formation long enough for us to get clear. Maybe even cripple the whole operation. Brooks shook his head. That's suicide. His armor still holding his escorts. We already cracked him once, Mara cut in. We just didn't finish the job. Bedges, give me a vector straight to the flagship minimum. Distance to weapons range. The AI's tone was even, but the readout it pushed to the main display was brutal direct. Assault will place vessel under combined fire from approximately 72% of active enemy units. Projected survival probability. Under current conditions, 9%. 9%, Rin repeated quietly. Then we'll have to make it 10, Mara said. Bring all rail batteries to continuous fire pattern. Target escorts only. I want a hole punched right to his front door at the Nightborne. Surged forward, thrusters roaring in the thin silence of space. The asteroid belt blurred past as they dove through gaps. Barely wider than the hull, alien hunters swarmed to intercept weapons. Flaring plasma bursts, lighting the rocks in flashes of green and red. The crew worked like they were wired into the ship itself. Brooks tracking firing arcs, Rin feeding micro-adjustments to the course, Aegis spitting real-time updates on shield strain and hull integrity. Every hit they took shook the deck, but the Nightborne kept moving faster and faster. 2 escorts ahead, Mara called out in it. Brooks replied. The rail batteries roared again, spearing through the first escort's hull in a burst of molten metal. The second tried to dodge but clipped a tumbling boulder and spun into the path of another shot, tearing it apart. Gap in formation. Aegis reported 15 seconds to closing. Take it. Mara ordered. The Nightborne punched through the opening straight into open space, the flagship filling the forward view. It was massive, even compared to the asteroids. Its black hull scarred from the earlier blast, but still radiating a terrible kind of strength. The crimson eye glared like it could see into their bones. The Wraith's voice came over comes. Again closer. This time, Nightborne, you've chosen death. I will make it slow, not if I get there first, Mara muttered. Every alien ship in range opened fire, the void between them lit with energy streams and kinetic strikes. The shields screamed under. The barrage alarms flared across the bridge shields. At 32%, Brooks shouted, called out closing to weapons range in 20 seconds. Mara S's hands gripped the armrests tighter than steel holds steady. The flagship loomed larger every heartbeat until its surface details became clear jagged. Plating rows of concealed weapons ports, a faint shimmer of its shield field, and right in the center of it all that blazing red. "I range closing 10 seconds," Rin said, voice Tachi's Mara. Ordered, arm the Starbreaker, again charging. The AI confirmed full cycle. In 20 seconds, Brooks stared wide. "Captain, will be point blank when it fires." "Exactly," Mara said, her eyes locked on the target. "Point blank means no shield can save him." Nightborne dived into the final approach, the enemy fire so intense it was like flying through a storm of burning glass, and still they didn't break course straight toward the Wraith's heart. The Nightborne's hull shuddered, like it was trying to tear itself apart, bulkheads groaning alarms, screaming from every console. The crew gritted through the vibration as the enemy fire slammed into them over and over, every strike eating away at their shields until the protective barrier flickered dangerously close to collapse shields. At 11%, Brooks called out, voice sharp through the chaos. "Rin. Stone was tight, 30 meters to collision vector, Captain, if we don't fire." Namara's gaze never left the crimson eye, filling the forward view. "Not yet, though." Wraith's voice slid back onto the comms, dripping with certainty. "You will not survive this run. I will carve your name into the void as a warning to the next fools." Huna Mara snapped the Starbreaker. Discharged with a soundless scream, light blooming brighter than a sun, point blank into the flagship's heart. The blast washed over their view like a tidal wave, the impact so close it made the Nightborne's HULL ring like a struck bell. Every system flickered dark for a breathless moment, as if the ship itself had gone blind when the glare faded. The view ahead was chaos. The flagship's crimson eye was gone, replaced by a jagged molten wound tearing across its midsection. Escape pods burst from its sides, spinning into the dark. Its escorts broke formation instantly, half fleeing, the other half spinning aimlessly without clear orders on the bridge. Rin exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Captain, we got him." Brooks' eyes widened across the tactical screen. "Readings are all over the place. Reactor breach confirmed. He's done." The Wraith's voice came again, faint, choked, but still there. "Nightburn, you think this ends?" Me. Then the feed cut to static. I just broke the silence. Multiple warp signatures inbound, unknown origin. Mara, straighten, bring us about, plot a course through the debris field. If more are coming, we're not waiting to meet them. Nightburn turned slow and battered, but still alive, weaving back into the asteroid belt as the alien flagship behind them split apart in a chain of explosions, each detonation casting long shadows across the rocks until nothing was left but drifting wreckage. In a dark silence, in that silence, Mara finally allowed herself a breath, and for the first time since this battle began, a small, sharp smile. The kind that promised the war was far from over, but tonight the galaxy had just learned what the UES Nightborne could do.